Are you just starting a new job for the first time working in a church? Or maybe you just haven't been that long at a job working in a church. I have been there. I worked for about 12 years in local church ministry. And I want to talk in this Word Made Digital tutorial about some things that I wish that people had helped me with or advised me on, some top tips before you start or when you're just getting started in a church job. Hello my friends, welcome to Word Made Digital Tutorials. I'm Joanna LaFleur. This tutorial is all about some top tips that I would give to someone who is starting out in a church job for the first time. Navigating church life can be complex because we're dealing with like our professional place, like our place of work, and then we're also talking about our spiritual place, our place of worship. We're also talking about often a place that our family is if you have a partner or you have kids, or maybe even your own parents, brothers and sisters are all part of that church community in many cases. And then you're also dealing with just the dynamics of your friends are there. There's just so much going on in this one place. It's very different than having a job in many other contexts. And so there's a lot of things to navigate, and we certainly can't cover it all in this video. I wish we could, sit down, hit me up if you want to. I wish we could sit down and talk about more of this one-on-one, have a cold drink in our hand and talk about what it's like to work in church, because it can be such a rich and rewarding place, but it can also be a place of a lot of struggle, a lot of pain, maybe you can get hurt. And I hope that these few tips that I want to offer you today can help you avoid some of that stuff. But we love the local church here at Word Made Digital. We believe that, Jesus is not just good news. He's the best news in the world. And so that's why we want to partner with local churches in order to help them be the best communicators in the world, because we have something so crucial to tell people about. I love the local church. It has been an honor to serve and work with churches, both from being inside in small church, big church, mega church, and also to partner now with churches across the world, really, with Word Made Digital. We always say here that Jesus is not just good news, he's the best news in the world. So we want to help the church be the best communicators in the world. We really do believe, and I really do believe fundamentally, that the church has good news. And I know that some days it doesn't feel like it, but the church really does. Let me tell you, though, about our sponsor for this episode of the podcast, because it's actually about that good news thing. For the month of June, Word Made Digital has partnered with Compassion Canada, and we're doing that in order to help a small but mighty church. This is a church of just 40 people in northern Thailand who believe fundamentally in the best news in the world, and they want to help others. So what are they doing? There are 40 people in a church serving 400 kids and youth plus their families, and we need to raise $4,000 to help them build a sports and learning center. This is about generational impact and opportunity to partner with this church with huge vision, but not a lot of resources. And it's a privilege to come alongside them and do that, to help tell people the best news in the world. So we're asking, would you give $40 to help us raise that $4,000? We're along the way of our fundraising goal, but we still have a ton of ways to go, and we would love for you to help us partner with this local church as they share good news. Okay, so you work at a church. What do you do now? The first tip that I would tell you is make sure that you have pastors and mentors, that is like spiritual caregivers to you, that are outside of your own church community. I think that was one of the biggest things that I didn't realize when I started working at a church, is that you might have really looked up to your pastor, your leader, and when you get into the church as a professional, a paid person on staff, something changes in the dynamic. It's not that you find out that they were a horrible person behind the scenes. I don't mean that. But what changes is they're now also your boss. So now they're the person who quite literally is doing your job performance. They're the person who's approving that you get paid every couple weeks to do your job. And so it becomes a complex relationship. So one of the things that I would advise everyone to do is, and it's not that you could never get pastoral care from inside your own church, that's not what I'm saying, but make sure you have some people who are spiritual guides, mentors, pastors in your life outside of your own local church. You're going to need someone to go to get guidance and pastoral care, especially if, for example, things get hard at your church job, or you're making decisions about if you should leave that job to take another opportunity or another direction. It's really hard to do that specifically in the context of your working relationship. And I mean, in many ways, it's actually just not fair to put that onto your boss. Think about it, that you're asking them to be so many different things, and how can they wear all these hats at the same time as the person who needs to evaluate your job performance while also guiding you through, a personal crisis that you're in. It's very difficult for them to have to do both, because while they're hearing about your personal crisis, they're also having to think about the implications of that for the church community. And so if you can divide that out a little, I think you'll have a happier, healthier relationship with your pastors or leaders in your local church, and also just not be disappointed when expectations aren't met by them, because it's really hard for them to be all those things to you at the same time. My next tip is along those same lines about finding mentorship outside. I would encourage you to not let your world get so small that you aren't learning from things outside the church. And I don't just mean your own specific church. I mean, think about, how can I learn from the world at large? Whatever your ministry. If you're involved in kids ministry, what's the best things that people out in the world are doing to reach, educate, and inspire the next generation of kids? Learn from that. Check out what the schools are doing. Check out what's going on YouTube. Check out what's going on in other, secular curriculums, like when they're using the Muppets or something, whatever it may be. Check out what they're doing and learn from the best, not just inside the church world. Whether you're in communications and, media, like that's my world, or you're in kids and youth, or you're in teaching, go make sure you are watching and learning and observing, and then taking the best from what's out there in the world to learn from. Don't just get caught in this way of you're only looking at your church and other churches, because otherwise I find a lot of the media, a lot of the content, a lot of the ideas, they start to just repeat themselves. But there's so many good resources out there. There's so much inspiration out in the big wide world. Make sure you expand yourself to keep constantly learning, not just from other churches and other Christians. My third tip is take days off. I mean, every single week, take 1, if not 2, days off. I see so many people who try to be the hero in church and power through and work 7 days a week. It's funny how in the 10 Commandments, we take seriously, don't murder and don't commit adultery. Those seem like big ones, big deals to us if they are broken. But then with the other one, the remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. That is, set apart a day of rest and worship every week. Pretty quickly in church life, we can be consumed by what we're doing and think that because we're doing the Lord's work, we don't need to rest. Even, of course, God himself rested on the 7th day of creation. So we are not above God, are we? Make sure you block out a 24-hour period and protect it. If you need to have conversations with people you're working with to articulate what that period is, hey, from like Friday at 5 p.m. until Saturday at 5 p.m., I am not available. That's my sacred, precious rest day. That's my Sabbath time. And make sure you try and stick with it. And try to communicate it with the people around you on your team if they aren't in that same practice, so that they can learn to respect that for you. That's something you want to keep doing. Related to that, of course, take your vacation days. Don't be the hero who doesn't use them. Even if you can't afford to go away somewhere, make sure that you take all the vacation days that you're allotted in a year so that you can keep bringing your best. Recharge your battery. Do things that are not in the church that you love to do. Remember your old hobbies. Engage in curiosity about other things outside of your church work. Go and explore your hometown and the world. Take your vacation days. My next tip is to make sure that you have a relationship with Jesus that isn't just based around the next project you have for work. If the only time you're reading the Bible or working on wrestling through an idea about theology, scripture, prayer is when you're preparing to preach or preparing to offer that to someone else in your community, you're doing it wrong. Make sure that you actually have a relationship with Jesus that is not just a professional Christian relationship. It's so easy to get caught up in the busyness of life and the busyness, just like everybody, it's hard to commit that time to reading scripture, to walking in prayer, to just engaging in all the spiritual practices of solitude and rest and generosity and fellowship with other believers. Make sure that that is part of your life, not just part of your profession. I see so many people who, after they leave a church job, they don't know what to do with their faith anymore. They've become so good at being a professional Christian, they forgot why they started. I'm sure you who are watching have seen that happen to people that you love or people you were led by in the past. In order to help that not happen to you, make sure that you and Jesus have a connection that isn't just because of your professional obligations to study Him, to connect with Him, to pray with others. Do it for yourself. Find some people who you love, whether they're in your church or outside your church community, and do it together. Wrestle it through. Go on those prayer walks. Do spiritual practices. And I have some links down in the show notes about some things that you might want to read, might want to study that aren't for your professional self, but for your own good spiritual health. My last tip for you today is to make sure you articulate to your leadership, whether that's a pastor, a manager, or even the board itself, make sure you articulate what you need to grow, what your hopes and aspirations are out of your time serving in this church. So whether that means there are some skills you want to grow, like you want to develop your own leadership and management skills, or you want to develop as a preacher and teacher, or maybe it's that you hope to go to seminary, or you have you like a reading plan, or you want to go to some conferences, whatever it may be. If you don't say it out loud, they may not actually know. Of course, they can't read your mind. And so make sure you take your own growth and trajectory as a person, a human being, but also in your career, and make some plans and then help articulate those plans to those who lead you. They may not be able to do all those things for you, but if you don't articulate them, they certainly won't be able to do all those things to help you and facilitate your own growth. I hope that you're on a church staff that wants to see you grow, that wants to see you thrive, that has an ability to partner with you and build plans with you so that you can grow and thrive, that your leaders are inspiring, that your management is helpful in your own development professionally, that the community is supportive and cheering you on, that they make sure they do give you time to take that day off, and they do encourage you to have that mentorship outside the church community, that they cheer you on as you grow and develop in your leadership. Church ministry is not for the faint of heart. It is a courageous choice to serve, a great act of love to your community. My prayer for you is that you would stay humble, that your life would look and smell like the smell test would be that you're like the fruit of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Wherever you may go, whether ministry for you is a short-term or a whole lifelong career for you, full-time professional ministry, not just sort of of course, the thing that all Christians do, which is serve, whether they're paid or not. I hope that it's a rich and fulfilling time, but in order for it to be, you got to make sure that you're caring for your own health, your own relationship with Jesus, and no one else can do that for you. You have to make sure that you do that for yourself. Hey, I would love to see you partner with Word Made Digital and with Compassion to serve this amazing small but mighty church in Northern Thailand, that 40 people who serve over 400 kids and youth who are trying to raise $4,000, a generational impact in that community to help kids who are in extreme poverty see a brighter future. It would mean so much to me if you would partner with us and give. I've given. Would you consider giving and make that an act of generosity in your spiritual practices today? Compassion.ca/WMD. The link will also be down in the show notes, and we'll see you on the next tutorial.